This is a Play Your Way network presentation. Get the full story at PlayLifeYourWay.com. In a world where comics, movies, games, rumors, and Kardashians come at you 24/7, three champions will rise to defend you from wasting precious time, money, and emojis. BK, Nate, and Derreck will show you how to do it. The Player Way.
It's on once again, Patron once again. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, with all due respect, it is episode 51 of the Player Way podcast. I'm your resident podcast DJ, BK, helping you understand how to curate your life and media.
The Player Way.
Along with my co-captains, Derreck.
At Corrupting the System on Instagram, corrupting any systems available. Maybe putting them back together, but you know, we're going to delve behind that curtain, see what's what. You already know who it is.
Behind that curtain, eh? Yeah, I see what you got cooking over there. And Nate.
That's me.
That's what's up. And what's also up is this is the first new format episode of the Playway Podcast, brought to you by Agency Cartel, official clothing for grind time. So if you want to help understand how to just relax the way you want to relax, if you want to learn how to just get out here and just grind it and just look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, you know what? I know I can be what I want to be. If I work hard at that, you know what I'm saying? I can do whatever I want to do. And you know how you're going to do it?
The Player Way.
Exactly. That's what's going on.
So
we're going to go for a much shorter podcast than we usually do, because on Thursday you're going to end up getting a brand new podcast called The Top 5, Weekly Top 5 to be exact, where Derreck, Nate, and I come together and help you curate your favorite things in life.
The Player Way.
So more details on that on Thursday when you download that. But for now, what you guys been up to this week?
Man, I've been taking a stroll down memory lane, finding some old films, movies just to watch, just to try to keep up, and also just to see if they hold up. Few do, few don't. But honestly, I've been kind of, as much as I'm not a huge fan of CW hero shows, I've kind of become obsessed with Black Lightning this past weekend, and his voice is what I wanted Luke Cage's voice to sound like. Like, Luke Cage always sounds like that guy that he's trying to sound tough, but I never felt like Luke Cage sounded tough, but this actor, it's pretty good. It's entertaining so far for a CW superhero show. Let me go ahead and book in that. But honestly, I like this one. It's up there pretty good. It's got
I've
the,
heard
it's got
a lot
a good
of a lot of people have a lot of great things to say about Black Lightning. I have not myself gotten a chance to take a listen and look at that. Nate, have you watched Black Lightning yet?
No, not yet, but I do watch the CW superhero shows. So I've been.
So, are you all caught up on like Legends of Tomorrow and everything, Nate?
When they come on Netflix, yeah, that's when I watch them.
Gotcha,
I don't watch them on TV. So I did watch Legends of Tomorrow. I saw
season.
Black Lightning on there. But I mean, they're cheesy shows, but they're fun.
So they're cheesy. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you would use that word cheesy, because I use that exact phraseology for something that appeared on YouTube Red this coming week.
Boom.
I mean, the Karate Kid.
And there it is.
Karate Kid is back, y'all, man. I watched all 10 episodes in 48 hours. I could have done it in a shorter amount of time, but I do have a life, and I have to, do stuff, outside of just consuming media. I have to create media. But, man, it's the best around.
No one's ever
I'm telling you. Have
man.
either of you guys seen it? Derreck, I know you probably haven't seen it yet.
I have not, but I did have a beautiful, a delicious teasing article on our website at playerwaypodcast.com, playlifeyourway.com, it definitely, I was like, and YouTube is offering the first episode for free, so I might go ahead and hit that free trial the player way and go and knock that show out.
If you watch one episode, you're going to want to like watch all of it. If you could do like Lil Dicky, maybe get the 7-day trial, and try to watch it before the 7-day trial is up.
Say that money. Hey,
I don't think you have YouTube Red either, right?
What's that?
You don't have YouTube Red, right?
No.
Okay, so you haven't seen Cobra Kai?
No.
Okay.
I'm aware
Cobra
of
Kai,
it, though.
to give you guys a rundown, it is cheesy in all the right way. All the right ways. There's a certain acting style that the Karate Kid had, Ralph Macchio. All of those guys, when you watch those old films, there's a sensibility that we had about martial arts and about mentor-mentee relationships in the 80s that we've become kind of jaded with in the 21st century. That sensibility is there, and yet at the same time, the 21st century sensibility within the children of the series, they have our sensibilities of, so like Ralph Macchio and Johnny. Well, let me go back and call them by the right characters. Why can't I remember the kid's name now? All of a sudden, I remember Johnny's name because it's all about him. But
Daniel LaRusso.
Daniel LaRusso, exactly. Daniel LaRusso, his character has grown up, and you basically get to see what would happen if you're this kid who was getting picked on all the time, and you start learning how to kick ass. You go to the other end of the spectrum, most likely. And if you're the guy that got his ass kicked, and you were the bully, you kind of go to a different, place as well. And so, 20, 30 years later, that's where these guys are. Is one guy never left that moment. He is, for all intents and purposes, he's still on that mat. He never got up off that mat after he got crane kicked with an illegal kick to the face.
An illegal kick.
An illegal kick to the face. Exactly. And then the guy who kicked him, he kicked his ass, never stops reminding him that he kicked his ass. Actually, to correct, he actually kicked him in the face. So it's like
face, man.
Exactly. So it's a great series, but it goes beyond that. These characters learn more. There's times where both of them are assholes. There's times when they're both on the same side, and everything that can happen happens. It's cheesy in all the right ways. It's very satisfying. In my opinion, I've seen all of the Karate Kid films. This is, to me, it's the most successful successor, in my opinion. So if you want to give YouTube Red a shot and watch Cobra Kai, you are definitely doing it
the player way.
Anything else that we should keep everybody on the up and up on, other than the Avengers, because we're going to talk about that in just a little bit.
Man, you got it, man. You got a good bow tie on it.
Cool, that's what's up. Well, the topic of this week, we're going to start hitting you guys with some topics, with some little bit of debates. You're going to hear what we talk a little bit about off camera, off microphone, and we're going to have a little debate. I don't know how well this is going to go, but it should be entertaining nonetheless. So here we go. This week's topic, we're going to talk about, I made a post on Facebook, and that post on Facebook, I'm going to pull that up real quick. It's essentially, it was my initial thoughts. I saw, like I told you guys, I saw Avengers Infinity War twice. The last time we spoke, I saw it one more time, so I've seen it 3 times total. Just the way people are talking about this thing, the way people are digesting this film, it's
the go-to right now.
It reminds me of what, and I think Nate is the person who said something like this. I think he was like, imagine what, maybe it might have been Derek. It might have been a blend of you two guys, but something was said in the last episode reminiscent of.
Nate, where Nate said, imagine if like DC gave, or Marvel its rights or something, their rights to make the movies. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was something like that, but then there was a different one, and I think Derek might have said something like this, imagine if Star Wars didn't drop the ball, like, on the last.
Oh yeah, I feel like that
on
was,
the Last Jedi.
Nate.
Yeah, so it was something like that. Like the way the outcry, the public outcry that we've gotten on this film has been very similar to what we thought the Last Jedi was going to get. And so it's just been interesting how it's all kind of played out. It's really kind of divided some people, and it's interesting that they moved this film up from coming out on May the 4th. obviously Disney did that intentionally because Disney didn't want to compete with their own product. But as my post says, to live in a world where the MCU just became a better saga than Star Wars. Wow. I got 30 comments on this thing. Anywhere from a guy just saying lies, different GIF comments. Some people just really, they felt some kind of way about it. I got a very impassioned text from Robert Jenkins today. And essentially, there's this feeling that you got with watching the original Star Wars that is like nothing else. I would make the argument that the feeling that people really got really happened in Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back is when you really knew you had something that was completely different. But
cheers to that. Definitely cheers on that. Sorry forgive the interjection, but just even going back to my own personal experience on this, just this short rabbit hole is, even when I watched the first Star Wars: A New Hope as a kid, I wasn't as distinctly remember being like, this was really cool. But when I watched Empire Strikes Back, I remember, this is really incredible. This is much more impactful than A New Hope was. A New Hope was a great movie, head to toe. I'm not going to take that away from it. But Empire Strikes Back, I feel like it took the great movie and then it gave it some deep substance already. And that's what I got from Empire Strikes Back. That's personally why it's still my favorite, of course, Star Wars to date. So forgive my interjection again, but I just had to touch on that.
No, good. I mean, that's the beginning of the discussion. Nate, what are your thoughts on just kind of your initial feeling from Star Wars? Like, would you say that the nostalgia had to do with the original Star Wars, or is it more for Return of the Jedi? I mean, not Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back.
No, I think it'd be the original trilogy as a whole. Because we're not of the generation that saw them in theaters.
Right.
So I saw them VHS, like back.
Right.
Back
so as a whole, that's what I'm getting at. Is it's not like the original Star Wars movie. So like a lot of people, they call it A New Hope now, but when most people talk about Star Wars, they're talking about like that first film, and the impact of that one film. But really, it's more so the entire saga. So you're in agreement on that, right, Nate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's what I mean. When I made that post, I was saying the saga, the story, the trilogy itself. However, as we know, as time went on, the story isn't just the trilogy. There's an additional trilogy that came before episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then you have 2 additional films after that. And that's a total of 5 additional films that have been added onto that original saga, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wait,
so
5. Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's getting it.
I was thinking we were going to count the standalones too.
No. So I'm not counting the standalones. I'm just like that. I mean, I guess you could count the. So we can say 6 then. Yeah, you're right. We could count the standalone as well, along with that, because that's part of the saga itself. Okay.
A Star Wars story.
Exactly. Then you got Solo coming out as well. But what I'm saying is that at this point, there are more terrible. Let me step back. There are more not so well executed parts of the saga than there are saga pieces that were complete films. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've always said, if I ever run into a person that's never seen any of the Star Wars movies, I never once say, oh, you have to go watch these. Because it's something you've either grown up with and you love, but if you're older, you'll just watch the movies, and I ain't not gonna lie, not all of them are very good. I mean, probably
I agree.
most of them are not very good. Yeah,
I clink my glasses to that.
I mean, in my opinion, there's 2 irrefutable good ones: episodes 4 and episodes 5. Outside of that, it's questionable. I mean, I would say episode 3 is pretty good, just to see what happened before episode 4. But everything else is missable, in my opinion.
I'm of the similar mindset. I probably have a more extreme corrupting the system statement just to go along with it. At this point, Star Wars and I agree, 4 and 5 are the two are the zenith of them. 5, then 4. But ultimately, if you watch Star Wars, it's really just to get the pop culture references by now. Like that's really all it is. And I'm not taking anything away from the thousands of.
So you don't get that weird look at the water cooler, like, wait, you've never seen exactly.
Yeah,
you don't want to be that guy.
Exactly, and that's really it. If you haven't seen it, oh, okay. And if it's not that important to you, like, it's okay. Honestly, like, you could make it through Ready Player One without many Star Wars references. Just saying.
It
is. And you know, it's a good argument if you end it with just saying. You know,
they are definitely movies that are easily digestible as children or watching it as a kid because your imagination can
great
run
family
a lot
movies.
Wilder.
Yes.
Yeah. When you start getting older and you start forming your own opinions, and, you know, build a lifelong catalog of movies you've seen, you probably wouldn't enjoy the Star Wars.
I feel a lot about some of the additional pieces of the Star Wars saga, the same way I feel about the Tolkien saga, Lord of the Rings. I personally have not seen. Actually, I take that back. I saw the first The Hobbit prequel film, and then I haven't seen any of them since. I didn't think the first one was very good, so I didn't want to ruin my love for that Tolkien series. But I just didn't want to see The Hobbit. I was like, I'll just stay within the realm of the Lord of the Rings saga. Does that diminish? I mean, do y'all? First of all, is that something that y'all feel a similar feeling with how those films were executed?
For me, I really enjoyed the Hobbit book as a child. So as I've become more and more part of the network here with you guys, I look at those experiences differently, and then I immediately the first thing I have to go to, I'm like, is it a nostalgia filter? Is that my first thing? Because when I hear The Hobbit, I'm like, oh, I love the book, and I love those cartoons, and blah, 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 and then I grew up as an adult. I watched the first 2, so I even went further than you, and I have yet to see the third one. So I feel that perfectly states to exactly what you're saying. If I didn't even have the desire to see something that I so loved as a child, just to see the wrap up of an actual trilogy, a purposeful trilogy, then something is lacking, and that is a definite parallel how I feel about Star Wars. You know what I mean? I liked The Phantom Menace because a guy had a dual lightsaber, and I liked the song. That's why I like The Phantom Menace. And the pod race. The pod race was cool. I'm not going to take that away. The pod race was cool, but a guy had a dual lightsaber and there was a cool song. I
personally do without the pod race. I can do without the pod race completely. But that's just me. Nate, any input on any of this?
I could do without little Anakin.
Yes!
You turn the baddest motherfucker in the galaxy into a little kid, and it ruins it for me.
And that's the thing. It's like, how do you really hate Anakin Skywalker when you started the series with him as a little kid?
He came, yeah, exactly. And the fact that he was born of immaculate conception was just, I mean, nothing against religion, but it's just a dumb story.
It's a concept that the guys at the Playway podcast will not have.
But because, I mean, this isn't to say that
3.
I won't watch further Star Wars movies because now, you know, as an adult, I'm invested, and I'll watch them just because. I think what the problem is, and not to take anything away from Kathleen Kennedy, because she
give him to us, Nate.
She is one of the most successful producers ever. Yes. She's produced some of the best movies ever made, but she doesn't have the same type of singular vision that Kevin Feige has for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you can tell just by the way Episode 8 basically undid everything in Episode 7. You know, all the mysteries we were waiting 2 years to get solved.
Yeah, what it did is it set out to kill
We're
the
casually
past.
Tossed over the cliff, Nate.
Well, exactly. It was set out to kill the past, but what was weird is they killed everything that we wanted to see and then left us with all of the past stuff that we didn't care about. So it was like, okay, so we're not actually going to burn the Jedi Codex. They're still alive. And Yoda knew that, but he's still acting like a weird puppet, weird guy. And then Well, no. Actually, Luke Skywalker does care about the past because he does project himself out there and he does protect everybody. And no, we're not going to completely fall in love with Kylo Ren. We're just going to get close to him and then we're going to decide we don't want to go to the dark side. Like, there's all of these things, you know, Rey just... Everything that we set up to kill the past, they got us ready for it the entire film. And at the last 15 minutes of the film, they were like, psych, we're going to not kill the past. We're going to go with everything as the past should be. And screw the entire movie. We're going to set everything back up the way it was before you came in to watch this in this theater. Screw you guys.
That way we don't make the Star Wars fans mad, and we can have a movie that brings in $2 billion. Perfect. Great formula, guys. Break. Let's do it. Let's roll with that.
And to me, this was the first, in my opinion, I won't speak for the other co-captains, but The Last Jedi was the first Star Wars film that felt like a money grab. It felt like 100%. It was like they produced this to keep this franchise alive and to keep pumping cash out of it. That's how I felt, and I feel like that's how a lot of people felt, but they just won't admit it. And Nate, you mentioned perfectly Kevin Feige, and that transitioned us to what the topic is about. So, after all of the stuff we've talked about, we've just shat all over everyone's favorite film of all time, and there are people who are listening to this that are probably pissed off. We're about to piss you off even more, because the topic is...
But wait, if you call now...
Exactly. We can throw in a couple of fuzzy dice. We'll sweeten the deal for you. But, the topic of this podcast is the Star Wars saga been overtaken by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Nate, we're starting with you.
In my opinion, being a comics fan, yes. But not only because of that. It's also a lot of I've been with the MCU from the beginning. I've watched each of these movies in the theaters from the beginning, unlike Star Wars, where I came in as a kid. But it's also the execution of it all, too. I mean, Infinity War is what The Last Jedi should have been. You know, it should have left us with a sense of despair, this anxiousness to see what's going to happen in the next one, but it didn't. You know, we all see Luke Skywalker is the spark that will light the fire that will bring down the First Order, you know, and they say it a few times in the movie. It was not the movie I was expecting to see. Infinity War was. Success-wise,
and there's something to be said for that.
You know, I think a lot of the Star Wars success was based on not knowing whether or not we were going to get more movies. It was a long while before George Lucas announced the prequels after Episode 6. And then after the prequels were done, we had no idea if we were ever going to get any new Star Wars movies. So I think that's another reason that Force Awakens was so successful, was that it's like, oh, wow, after all these years, you know, we finally get another one. And it brought back the nostalgia. From a storytelling standpoint, I think MCU is superior than Star Wars because there's a singular vision. You know, they're building towards something.
Derek,
to mirror your point, you said The Last Jedi is the first Star Wars movie that you felt like it was a money grab.
Yes.
I will say I felt that way with The Force Awakens because The Force Awakens was A New Hope, just with newer stuff. That's all it was to me. That's all it was to everybody, and if everybody's going to be honest with themselves, it was just A New Hope with a different Death Star, which they started recycling the Death Star in Return of the Jedi. Like they already figured out, oh, we have a formula here, let's just redo it, and they're still doing it here decades later. So,
which is fine if you continue with it. To Nate's
exactly,
point,
which brings me
set us up. Yeah, go ahead, Derek. Sorry.
You're good. It brings me to Last Jedi when I actually got the feeling. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're going to adjust what's been in stone for 40 years. I'm going to get something different, and then I didn't. And it was such a letdown to me, and I was so disappointed in this movie. And I had extremely high hopes. You know, you heard it here on the Play Away podcast, and it really forced the question to look at the saga, to look at the series.
Get it?
And
they forced the question?
and it brings me to this, which the first movie that I had this type of Star Wars feeling was The Matrix. When I saw this movie, I was like, oh my goodness, I want more, but I had no idea if there were going to be more. The MCU has put me, as a consumer and as a fan, this is my Star Wars. The MCU is my personal Star Wars. This is my Star Wars for Derreck. This is what I'm going to go see every time they throw out a movie because I'm invested. I've been watching this TV show for 20 movies now. You know what I mean? This is a long series, and I'm invested in dozens and dozens and dozens of characters, and I can spout their names off. I can't do that with Star Wars. I have to struggle, and I'm just not as invested in characters. And when we're going to come to the saga, we're in a saga right now that has been stirred up for more than 10 years, and it still delivers. Evidenced by the fact that they had $11 billion, or $1 billion in 11 days. That, I mean, they know what they're doing, and it's still entertaining even for a pop movie formula. Star Wars can still do a pop movie formula, but I wasn't satisfied with what I saw with Last Jedi because it felt forced again, so to speak.
I got what you're saying there, man. All right, so I agree with you two that yes, the MCU is a superior saga in terms of storytelling, in terms of execution, and in terms of longevity. I know a lot of people, they've grown up on Star Wars, and it's gonna sound to you on this podcast like we're betraying geek culture, but that's not it. There is a such thing as evolution. If we stayed in the Model T our entire lives, we'd have never gotten the Firebird. We would have never gotten the DeLorean. You know, there's times, the things that were great, there's a reason why great is great. Because there's a such thing as good, there's a such thing as better, and there's a such thing as best. And then you can evolve beyond that even, okay? So when we're talking about why this saga is superior, it's got a lot to do with what Derreck was saying, is that for as many films as they've made, and how many films are, it's like, how many films do we have total?
MCU?
Total, we actually have 19.
Yes, that's right. I was going to say 18, but with the new one, it's 19 now. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I said 20 because I'm looking
got two
ahead
more,
to
exactly. So we got 20 films within a saga, and they haven't screwed up yet. I mean, yes, there's been some stories that have been better than others, but I went back and watched Iron Man 3 this past week, and the great thing about... Yes.
I didn't realize that was the biggest money-making Iron Man. Almost twice as it made as much as the 1 and 2. It's the only Iron Man.
Nate was in the theater with me when I saw Iron Man 3. I hated that it started off with blue, da boo dee da boo da. I hated that. You know, I knew Derreck would love the Eiffel 65.
Shout out to Kurt Barnes and Derreck Lewis grooving the Eiffel 65.
You hated what they did to the Mandarin.
I hated what they did.
I couldn't understand because I was like, the Mandarin's such a shitty character anyway. Do whatever you want to him, you know? I
thought he was awesome and he had like rings that made him badass.
Well,
that's what I wanted to see.
Nate, I don't think ever saw the action pack in the 90s. The action hour pack was this hour that had Iron Man and Fantastic Four. See, this is not the first attempt at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, okay? That's even the reason why they even distinguish it with its own name, MCU. Because in the 90s, they had an animated cinematic universe that had crossovers and everything. You had X-Men was the first one that came out. X-Men was a crowning achievement because it was the first episodic cartoon in America that had an overarching theme to it. It had to be continued episodes. Before, and I fact-checked this before I even talked about it. Before that, yes, you had it in anime, but anime wasn't a thing in America yet, except for a very, very few amount. I mean, it just wasn't a thing yet. Okay,
it's nominal. It's not even enough to mention.
People didn't really know about Dragon Ball Z yet. Even though it was out, people didn't really know about it yet. It hadn't caught on in America yet. So that was something that was different. X-Men was the first to do that. It had adult themes to it. It was hard for kids to grasp onto. Then you had Iron Man had a show. Then you had Fantastic Four. Then you had the Incredible Hulk, and then you had Spider-Man, Fox's Spider-Man, and all of these things did very, very well. The only thing that really disrupted it was when you got to the end of the '90s and they started actually making films with Spider-Man rolling out, and they sold off all of the rights to make money. So those two things together happening in concert, which is, it's kind of a chicken and egg, meaning you had to sell off the rights and then you got the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man thing. So for us who've seen that cinematic universe, Nate, Mandarin was a badass in that universe. The Mandarin had this long flowing black hair. He had green
Jason
skin.
Momoa.
Yeah,
Jason
Momoa.
I'm aware of what he looked like, yeah.
And he was a badass character.
In terms of a character, I don't know.
He was. If you go back and watch,
He would have been better than Guy Pearce. He would have been better than a Guy Pearce villain.
Actually, I take that back. He's exactly the same as Guy Pearce. That's the thing I had a problem with.
Well, I meant,
and they kind of, and that's what they kind of did with the character, is he was the Mandarin. I even looked at it. He had the tattoos. He had the dragon tats and everything. It's just they didn't hit you over the head with it that he was the Mandarin enough. But essentially, when you rewatch it, that's what they're trying to say, is that his character was the Mandarin, and he had this sprawly looking guy. They had two incarnations of the Mandarin. One in the mole man looking one that was from the comics. That was the character that Nate was like, do whatever you want to do with him. And he was a silly looking villain who was very stereotypical. He was like
a Fu Manchu Asian.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, but this was back when Tony Stark's origin was based out of Vietnam. You know?
Exactly. And then you have the guy who looks a lot more like Guy Pearce, which is very reminiscent of the Iron Man. And then, of course, you had the guy in Iron Man 1 who was part of the 10 Rings, who looked a lot like that character from the 90s as well. So there's a lot of mythology built into that. And there was a one-shot that was released later that rehabilitated Iron Man 3, in that there really was a Mandarin, but we haven't seen him yet. So what I like about this goes to what good storytelling is. When Kevin Feige realizes that they've screwed something up, he's like, go make a one-shot. There's been several one-shot things that have been released on Hulu, on ABC, on Netflix, that you can go and see little story additives. There's TV shows. They clean stuff up when they screw it up. And
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm telling you.
That's and what's beautiful about that is that's what the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are even supposed to do in the MCU, and they're actually doing it for their own series in the real world. That's awesome to me. I'm just fascinated.
Yeah, so
it's levels, actual levels.
So you got so if we're keeping tab, that's one point that the Star Wars Lucasfilm franchise doesn't quite have going on. If anything, Lucasfilm is doing some great things with their animated features. They have these animated shows that are really helping to build. In fact, there would be no Rogue One probably without the animated features. A lot of the scenarios that come out come from storylines on those cartoons that they've been creating, okay? So even down to Asuka, or whatever her name is. Isn't that her name?
Ahsoka,
that's right. Ahsoka, like, that character is somebody that we don't hear about in the main franchise, but what we love most about Anakin Skywalker is within that character. And because why would you do that? Why would you have a character that is incredibly popular with fans, but you don't say anything about this character on screen ever? What is that about? There's several of those.
The Clone Wars show was made after the prequels already came out.
Yeah, but there's been subsequent shows and films that have been made since. You get what I'm saying? There's other things that have come out since. I mean, we even found out that Derreck's favorite Darksider, he didn't die. He got cut in half, but he lived on. Why aren't we seeing this in the films? There's so much material that's happening, but for whatever reason, when we get to the big screen, like DC, you leave chunks out. And so that's the reason why I would give a point toward the MCU. MCU uses everything. If there's a throwaway line that they can put in the TV show that has to do with the movies as an influence on it, you'll hear about it. If there's something that's happening in other things on the television shows that can influence the movie, you're doing that. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has the TV show has implications on the films. You know, if you really are a huge diehard fan, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is for you. Like, it gives you everything you need to know. In fact, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got a lot of views on Netflix after this film came out, Infinity War. So my point in saying all of that, to not belabor the point, is point number one is going to the MCU. They know how to use their universe, they know how to use the source material, and they know how to put pieces in the right places to help rehabilitate storylines that are not so good. All right, moving on to the second. Nate, what would you say is the second thing that makes the MCU superior to Star Wars as a saga?
Well, we covered a lot. It's more modern. I think it's more relatable to people, to the general public, than Star Wars is. I think for sure. Yeah.
So all right. But Nate, I'm going to be devil's advocate. But Nate, you know, the other saga was made in the 70s. Of course, one made more recently is going to be more modern than the other.
Yeah, but it's more grounded. It's set in the real world. You know, it's not. I mean, excluding stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, we understand that. But it started off with Iron Man being a normal guy living in New York or living in Malibu. You know, these are places we know. He was a weapons manufacturer. That's a real job. You know, he is a billionaire playboy philanthropist. Those three things are real things. It's
tangible.
He's not in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
with a timeline being kind of invented as it goes along. The BBY, which is, if you didn't know what BBY is that's the timeline that they always use before the Battle of Yavin, which is what happens in Rogue One. That's the Battle of Yavin. So everything before the Battle of Yavin is like BC, and everything after that is was the other one, AC or whatever you want to call it?
Is AD or CE?
Yeah, AD. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. So yeah, Nate, to Nate's point, exactly, it's tangible. So that's the second point. Marvel's stuff is, the MCU is tangible. It's something that's real. On top of that, something that I thought you were going to go toward is, if you are the type of person that says, yeah, well, it's going to kind of look old because it was made in the 70s. Yeah, but it's not supposed to look old. With time, if it's made in a galaxy far, far away, it's not disco 70s out in a galaxy far, far away. It's supposed to be something far apart and away from what we're...
And you could really tell that with Rogue One. Like, the Death Star plans were held in, like, this 1970s hard disk.
Yeah, they have to age it to make it make sense. And then what I love about the MCU is the MCU is thinking about that already. You see shades of that. They go back in time. They go back to like the 1930s and 1940s and 1950s. They go back and say, okay, this is what it was like back then. And they use real tangible things. And they make the film look like it was back in the Rosie the Riveter period of time. You know, so that it fits within that time period. Then it comes up to Brandy, You're a Fine Girl with Peter Quill. And it's like, okay, this feels like it was in that period of time. Oh, and he chose to look like Kurt Russell because he liked what Kurt Russell looked like. So if you want to pick on how his look looks, he doesn't look exactly like Kurt Russell. Well, that's not Kurt Russell playing him. He looks like that character because that's what that guy liked. Ego liked the look of him. Then you move forward. Then you got Wakanda. You got Ant-Man. It keeps going with time, and you're going to be able to go beyond it as well. And you're already seeing shades of futuristic look even to the MCU now. So to Nate's point, it's tangible. It feels real. And with time, it's gonna age a lot better. Is that what you're getting at, Nate?
Yeah, and also once it started to deviate from being real, it was already earned at that point with the audience. You know, then we can, okay, let's go to the galaxy, let's go to the cosmos. All right, let's go into the area of mysticism. You know, it's a slow, gradual build that they've earned. Yeah.
You're right. They started with Iron Man, the most tangible character,
building his first suit off of old missiles. You know, it wasn't like
Nate's got so many levels to this. I didn't even think about it like that.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave.
Practical. It looked very practical building up to it. Derek, that's the second point we're talking about, tangibility.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of goes into a handful of thoughts, but to really, of course, piggyback off of Nate, just, yes, like when we hear about these cities that we know exist, when we hear about these places that are on this planet that we've either been to or we know friends and family or just that we can actually have a connection to, it immediately enhances your cinematic adventure. Just period, the end. If it's like, boom, Dallas, Texas. Oh, great. I'm born and raised from there. I'm going to seriously relate to this. This looks like going to be a really good movie. And the fact that they can do that in placement, like one of my favorite comics, Hannibal Buress, said when he was live in Chicago, I can't be making Chicago-based jokes. That's not going to play well to everyone. It's going to be great for you guys. But even Marvel can do that. They can take you to those places, but they take you in and out and everywhere. They put you where you need to be in those moments, whether it's tied to a memory for you or not, but they've created it. You see it. I can't relate to being on a spaceship traveling at hyperspeed, and I never will. I can relate to a bully punching you in the face in a locker and you wishing you had superpowers and then you get bit by a spider. I can relate to that. I didn't get bit by a spider and get superpowers yet, but I'm still hoping. I still see shooting stars and meteorites. Fingers crossed. Get back with me. I'm going to holler at you. But the tangibility.
Smoking. Keep going.
The tangibility of all of those things is what is going to enhance your movie adventure always. I see those cars every single day. That's what it would look like if this city's destroyed. I've seen footage and film. I can see news pieces. I can relate to this. Yes.
As Nate was getting at, it's building the suspension of disbelief. The best thing that a magician can do is a magician always starts off with something that we all know is true. Before he can make the card disappear, he has to prove to us that the card exists, and it's an everyday card that we would touch anyway. That's the reason why you bring somebody on stage. Because through that person on stage, you live through that person. You're like, okay, I trust this person because they're in this audience like I am. Damn it, I wish I was the person who he picked when I put my hand up. But I choose to live through this person. They touch the card. I'm believing in you. I'm believing you. I'm living vicariously as a much better word. Okay, through this person. And through all of this, analogy. Exactly. And then what you find out is when they make it disappear, it makes it even more. When that person is on stage standing next to them, you first look at their face before you're shocked. You look at this person and they go, holy crap, how did they do that? And then you go, I know, right? What happened? How did they do that? And then then you get out into the audience after the show is over with, and people flock around that person like, did they really have that card? Is that really what happened? Yeah, I don't know how it happened. How many times, Derek, have you been that person who got pulled up on stage and you're doing a funny dance in the middle of the show, and then after that, people pull you out and say, man, you did such a good job on stage with that person, patting you on the back.
Yeah, exactly. And man, that's one of those things that we crave for. Like you described it perfectly. It's what you want. I want to be in a cave and be able to make a suit that can help me fight crime. I don't necessarily yes, it would be awesome to have force powers, but that's just completely ridiculous. I can maybe find some old pieces of metal, you know what I'm saying?
That's the
have my refrigerator
of Iron
running.
Man 3. That's the importance of Iron Man 3 is there's a kid, any kid can help Iron Man be. And as an adult, I hated that, but I had to look at it from a kid standpoint. Like that like
would
the
be
kid
incredible as a kid.
Yeah, that was like the kid that was in, for example, when they adapted Power Rangers Super Sentai Force to America, one of the things they kind of lost in the fold is that there was a kid ranger in some of the incarnations. They eventually got to Power Rangers Turbo and they added a kid in there. Older kids hated it, but little kids loved it. So that's the thing that's going to make it not just tangible, okay? It's not just
that
not
creates
just tangible,
future.
not just tangible, but the third checkbox in R3, it's going to be relatable through time. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what the MCU passes the baton. In Star Wars, there's only one hero. Only one person can win. Only one person. And that's the problem that they tried to fix with The Last Jedi. They tried to throw away this idea that I am the legend and I am the person that can fix it. And that Daisy Ridley's character, Ray, was supposed to be, it could be anybody. They had the little kid with the broom. They're trying to do what the MCU is doing, which is to have different archetypes, different types of figures. You got a black guy from Wakanda. You got a guy and a girl from Middle Europe. You got a guy who all he can do is be an archer, but he still can help save the day at the end of the day. You have a guy who's a mild-mannered scientist, but turns into the most strongest thing in the universe. Okay, all of these different people, as a group, as Captain America says, we either win together or we lose together. It's not about one person being the person. When Tony Stark tries to be the guy that fixes it, he fucks everything up. Okay? But when he trusts the entire team and he comes together, that's when they win. And that's going to be the triumph of Avengers 4, is that's the ultimate takeaway. When not one of us is greater than all of us. And that is a story that Star Wars cannot tell. Because it's all about goddamn Luke Skywalker, okay? And they tried to
New
fix
Hope.
New Hope.
That's what,
not
exactly. The
ahead,
Last
man.
Jedi.
Tell it.
That's why
Tell it,
when
D.
the bad movies, that's why when the bad movies happen, the Empire Strikes Back. That's why it was so dire, because they only had one hero. The whole Empire struck back. And then the last one, Return of the Jedi, singular again.
Yes.
So it's their common theme. MCU, they're not only creating relatability, they're also creating the future fans, because our parents' generations are the ones that saw Star Wars in the theater, but I didn't really get that energy passed down. I can enjoy this MCU and I can pass this down to my kids, and then they're going to grow up loving this as well, because this is already on deck for them. Like, them watching Iron Man, even though this is a 10-year-old film, it's still going to be right then and there, like points 1 and 2, and then leading into 3 with relatability. That's what's going to create the longevity, and that's what they've done already.
Nate looks like he wants to jump in here. Go ahead and get yourself,
I was
buddy.
just agreeing. I was completely in agreement with what he was saying.
And here's the last point. Here's the bonus point, because we're getting to the end of the podcast for this week. Shout out to Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith, he had an analysis that was really, really long-winded, but I think it was more so he's just happy to be able to talk again. He lived through a heart attack, something that one in 3 of us will probably deal with within our lifetime. But he survived. And
he's not.
And he's like, man, the first thing I thought about after getting off that table is, man, I get to go see Avengers now. Like, that's awesome. And one of the things that he said is the MCU finally recreated an experience that comic fans, and Nate, you'll be able to relate to this, we always understood. There was all of these disparate comics that fit the different archetype. Some people are going to like Black Panther. Some people are only going to like Captain Marvel. Some people will only like Iron Man. But when they had these annuals that came together and you had these crossover stories, that's when all of the fans kind of had their convention. They kind of got together and was like, dude, this mega story. And that's what you got with... They started a little bit with Civil War, but the first true annual that they created via film was Avengers Infinity War. Mm-hmm. That's something also that Star Wars is a buck behind on, because the annual for the Star Wars films is the official Star Wars film. They're trying to create it. You got these Star Wars stories with Solo and all of that, and they're trying to create this experience where you don't have to watch everything, but it's a spectacle when everything comes out. But the problem is, when you create this annual, you got to take us somewhere beyond what we had even imagined, or at least give us something we wanted. And if you get both, you get what you need, man.
Get 2 handfuls.
Get 2 handfuls. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to wrap it up in terms of that conversation. On all 4 counts that we talked about, I can't even remember all of them. What was the first one we started off with? It talked
Story.
about story. Yeah, story.
The saga.
And,
yep.
Yeah, we talked about the saga itself. We talked about it holding up over time, tangibility, relatability, and then recreating experience from one medium to the next. So that's like 5 things. I mean, if at the end of this podcast, you should be able to articulate your point in a very educated manner.
The player way.
Okay. Any final points from anyone? on this conversation.
MCU over everything.
Honestly, I think to fix the Star Wars universe is you got to start doing what stop being so shy to take away from the extended canon that was created in comics and books that people really did love. Like you start to see that in, as you mentioned earlier, the cartoon shows. Star Wars Rebels brought in Admiral Thrawn, who first appeared in one of the extended universe books, and people love that character, and to see him appear. So I think you really need to stray away from the Skywalker. Finish it with episodes 9, and then go. You can start to delve into the older, like the old Republic, the beginning of the Republic, before there were any Skywalkers, back when it was just Sith and Jedi.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like, start giving people what they really want, and that's it.
And take some time. Like, I get that they want to get these films
Think
out.
a singular vision, yeah.
Yeah. Take some time and really recreate how you want this thing to go. I mean, I see Kevin Feige beyond Marvel being called in as a consultant to work with other studios. I mean, they're all Disney at this point. I don't see why he's not working with them. Say, guys, if you want to do what we're doing, here's what you got to do. And
dude said in interviews he's got a plan until like 2025, and I'm sure he's thinking even beyond that. Like, yeah. I mean, that's what you do if you want to build this universe.
And Nate just told you what to do.
The Player Way.
All right, and that means it is time for the end of the episode. For the good of the order, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, we're going to give you some bite-sized things to keep up with for the upcoming week. First and foremost, any moments of silences?
There it is. That was your moment of silence.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one. I was going to wrap up that section and nobody else had them. Shout out to Pat Morita, even though Pat Morita died a long time ago. If you have not seen Cobra Kai, there is an amazing send-off for both the actor and the character. There's an episode actually dedicated to Pat Morita because that franchise was kind of upside down. Overbrook Entertainment, which is Will Smith's company. Yes, you did just get an exclusive.
Right. Exclusive. The Player Way.
Exclusive.
Yes, Will Smith's company still owns the rights to Karate Kid. That's how they got their kid in it to begin with. So the person behind all of this nostalgia is Will Smith's Overbrook Entertainment Company. And I love the fact that he stayed quiet. He's not out in the media trying to take all the sunshine. It's like he's being a quiet boss when it comes to that, but then being out on social media with other things. But Pat Morita, moment of silence for him, and Mr. Miyagi within the same token. So shout out to them. Also, this coming week, Black Panther is finally on Blu-ray and streaming. So that is coming. Really excited to have that in my hands. Now I just need a bootleg of Infinity War, and I will be just right with the world.
Oh, man.
Anything else
Somebody
coming up?
on the truck.
Anything else you guys want people to watch out for before I wrap it up?
Wrap it up,
watch
B.
Infinity War again.
Yeah, gotta watch it again.
Go do it again.
Deadpool is coming up. You will notice we have a new logo created by Nate, inspired by Deadpool, that will be coming on with this podcast. So shout out to Nate for doing art.
The Player Way.
And finally, before we do anything else for this week, Donald Glover appeared on SNL, and there's a brand new music video out called This Is America. We did an article on it. It's out there. Derreck also did an amazing article on the character development of Thanos. So those two things are on the Play Your Way network. Go to playlifeyourway.com, playyourwaypodcast.com, and we want to hear from you. Go on IG at playyourwaypodcast, or you can you can go on our Facebook, Play Your Way Network. Holler at us and argue with us. Tell us we're wrong, but we're ready for it. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, with all due respect, I've been your resident podcast DJ, BK, helping you understand how to curate your life and media.
The Player Way.
Along with my co-captains, Nate.
That's me.
And Derreck.
Corrupting the system, you already know.
no matter what path you take or what actions you decide to follow, just make sure you're doing that shit
the player way.
Send us off, Nate.
I hope they remember you.
That's right. I like it.
Oh, God,
see you next week.
It's so good. So good. It's so perfect. Oh, that's great. Thanks for listening to the Player Way podcast. Recorded in a single take from Los Angeles, California, Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, by Nathan Peterson, Derreck Lewis, and BK Jackson.
And I'm Darren Marlar, the majestic voice of the Player Way podcast.
Our opening theme is titled Bound by Ricky Remedy, courtesy of Elysian Records. And our closing theme is titled Coconut King Diaries by Xander, spelled Zahnder. You can find this music by both Ricky Remedy and Xander, and many more tracks on SoundCloud. And remember, no matter what choices you make or paths you follow, just make sure you do it
the player way.
See you next week.